So do you know that moment when you begin to do a specific activity, like writing your resume profile, that little description inside your resume, and it takes way longer than expected? Like you end up putting in way more effort and energy than it really should have. Because I'm definitely guilty of that. I'm probably more guilty than anyone else. And it's very easy to assume that happens because you're not skilled enough or you don't have enough experience writing resumes or whatever it happens to be. But I would argue that in most cases, that's not the real reason. In most cases, it's not a lack of expertise that causes you to work much harder than you should for a specific task or for something to take longer to finish. It's something else, and that's exactly what I wanted to talk to you about in this video, because I think I finally figured it out. Today, actually, I think I found out the reason in this book called Psycho-Cybernetics. By the way, 10 out of 10 book, really great if you're interested in things related to identity or subconscious or self-image. Definitely recommend this book, but let me read you a short paragraph from this book, because it just reveals the answer in just a few lines. So here's what it says. This is Daniel Jocelyn in the book Why Be Tired, and it says something like this. It talks about the conscious effort which freezes the thinking mind. So which causes you to think slower, which causes you to overthink ideas and just make no progress even if you put in a lot of time. And it says something like this. This conscious effort is practically always due to the tendency to exaggerate the difficulty and importance of your mental labors, and to take them too seriously and fear that they will find you incapable. Okay, so what this guy Daniel is saying is that if you assume that the task you're about to do is really hard, then it's like you're putting some barriers in your mind. It's like there's gunk in your thinking mechanism, and it just ends up working more slowly and less effectively. And to give you an example, in this book it talks about public speaking. It talks about how a specific person who's perfectly fluid in speaking when he talks to his friends, the same person will end up freezing on stage when speaking in front of an audience. And fundamentally, the skill isn't different. You're still just speaking. There's nothing particularly more difficult in the second case, but just because you assume it's harder, just because you assume you need this whole lot of practice to be able to be proficient on stage, that's why you perform worse. And I'll give you an example from my own life as well, because this happened a lot back then when I was practicing copywriting, when I was learning to write persuasively. So I would try to write a simple 300-word email, and it would take ages. And it's precisely because I assumed something difficult. I assumed it's something that very few people know how to do, writing persuasively, and so I assumed it also required a lot of effort to get done. And sure enough, I would spend 2 hours or even more on that particular 300-word email, which is insane. And so the solution is pretty simple here. As complicated as the problem was for me, or as complicated as figuring out what the reason behind this problem was for me, as simple was the answer provided in this book. And it goes something like this. I'm gonna hit you with another quote, okay? This is by Emile Coué. Hopefully I pronounced that correctly. And it says something like this. Always think of what you have to do is easy, and it will become so. Okay? So, pretty simple. If you think the current activity is going to be easy, whether it's writing a resume, whether it's talking to a stranger, whether it's speaking in front of a crowd, if you assume it is easy, it will certainly help you perform better and make it seem easy. And that's because it's like you're borrowing this empowered identity. It's like you're borrowing the persona of someone who is already capable, who already has all the skills or all the necessary tools to finish that particular activity, and to do so without any difficulty. You're temporarily borrowing that persona, and when you think that way, when you have this internal conviction that it's gonna be easy, it's gonna be no trouble, that's when you stop standing in your own way. That's when anxiety and overthinking or uncertainty and fear, all of that stuff stops blocking your thinking process, okay? It stops standing in your own way and making you perform worse, like you're expecting to fail, All right. And so, after all, if you think about it, it's easier to win when you expect to win. That's why, for example, optimists are 99% of the times gonna get further ahead in life than pessimists. You know, optimists are gonna be more likely to take advantage of opportunities. They're gonna get more out of the opportunities they already have because they assume it's gonna be alright. They assume they're gonna win or at least perform well. They're not thinking about the negative scenarios, the worst case scenarios. They think about the positive stuff. And sure enough, it's like a prediction that ends up becoming reality. So stand out of your own way, guys. Just assume whatever you're doing is going to be easy, and you'll probably notice that it sure enough is going to be easier than you thought. Until next time.